Have you ever came to a point in your life where you just say to yourself, I can't keep pretending everything's fine. I'm tired of wearing this mask or mask. And if something doesn't give, then Freck knows what will happen. And that day, or that point, that boiling point came for me in my 30s. A few months after I left the Royal Marines. And the Royal Marines for me were a massive, massive security blanket. Massive security blanket. And when I joined at 22, that's what I needed then. I needed a sense of community, sense of belonging. I needed somewhere I could attach myself to find myself, to be honest. And the Royal Marines gave me that. They welcomed me in with open arms into the brotherhood. They didn't judge me. They didn't judge me about my past in terms of everything I was struggling with, in terms of gambling and all the chaos and destruction that I caused myself and everybody else, I guess. They just says, come on in. They gave me a number 1 all over, shaved all that off. And they started the process of breaking me down at 22, breaking the old identity down and rebuilding a new one in the shape of a Royal Marine. And my time in the Royal Marines over the 8 years was a bumpy ride. It wasn't easy. Although they gave me all the things, I was still a wounded boy underneath in terms of really, really struggling emotionally in the relationship with myself and building healthy connections outwards. So leaving at 30 was terrifying, massively, massively terrifying. But I knew I had to make that step, to be honest, or I would spend my entire life or career, 20 odd years in the Marines, under a security blanket, but not growing emotionally when I look back at it. I'd have probably stayed stuck in there because it was not so easy, but it was so easy for me because I had a roof over my head, I was getting fed every single day, and I was getting money in my bank account every single month, so I could pretty much do whatever I wanted with that in terms of spending it on nights out. A big one for me with my coping mechanism was gambling. I could spend it all in gambling and not have any real responsibility, just live each month in survival mode, and that's pretty much what I did my full entire career in the Marines. And when I did leave, I moved in with a friend who's also a former Marine, and me and him have got a similar background, similar childhood, similar coping mechanism, similar kryptonite, which was gambling, and we loved a night out. So me and him were like, let's do this. And for the first few months, 3-4 months of leaving the Royal Marines and moving in with him was absolutely carnage, and he'll tell you that as well. It was pretty much me working. I worked in Pure Gym Shawlands at the time, and I was also trying to start up a boot camp as well. And I always remember this one day, I had about a grand sitting, and I was like, right Stuart, we've got to get up to the William Hill at the end of my street, and I just got to bet. And I went in and I started playing the roulette machine. And I won about $3,000 out the fixed odd betting terminals, but believe it or not, I know that's hard to believe because the things are rigged. And I took the money out and I went back and I was like, Tim, I've won $3,000. And he's like, mate, that'll be gone by tomorrow. Because he knew what I was like, exactly like him. I'd have went back to the bookies and bet again, or went and had a night out. But he was right. The next day I went back to the bookies and spent all that $3,000, man, in the horses, the roulette, whatever it may be. And I remember walking back for the William Hill because it was literally 200 metres for the end of our flat. And I was just shaming myself, telling myself that I was the worst of the worst. And guilt. Saying to myself, why did you do that? Why do you keep fucking hurting yourself, Stuart? Why do you keep putting yourself through that misery? And I went into my flat and I sat on the edge of my bed and I was contemplating my life that day. I was like, what the hell, man? What the hell are you doing, shit? If you don't sort this shit out, you're not got to be here. Not got to be here at all. And something touched me that day. Because a few days later, I was doing one of my outdoor boot camp sessions. And at the end of it, as I always do, I jumped in my wee van, 600 quid van, with the kettlebells scraping along the ground. And I just had this sense, I'm going to stop at this shop and get myself some rolls and sausage to sit and chill for the afternoon. And then a car came up beside me, and I was like, that looks like one of our members. And I jumped out my van, and she jumped out. It was Amy. And Amy was the wife of my friend Gary, who joined my boot camp to help me get it started up. And she's like, Stuart, can I speak to you? And I was like, fucking hell, what's this? What's happening? I thought maybe it was something to do with her and Gary or whatever. And she's like, Gary told me I've not to tell you this, but I have to tell you. Honestly, I have to tell you. And I was like, fuck, what's she got to say? And she says, I have your dad here. And he says, everything is okay. And I was a wee bit in shock. I was like, fuck. Taken aback, actually, because my dad passed away when I was 19. And here I am, standing at 30, outside my wee clapped-out van with all my kettlebells in it. One of my good mates' wife, who started as a founding member at one of our boot camps, is telling me that my dad's here and everything's got to be okay. I was like, fuck. I was like, Amy, my dad, Pat. She's like, I know, but he's here and he's speaking to me and he's told me everything's got to be okay. And I was just like, okay, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing. She's like, cool. Jumped back in her car and I jumped back in my van and I sat there like, what the fuck just happened? I drove back down the road and I sat in my sofa and I was like, what the fuck just happened there, Stuart? I was complete disbelief. I was in shock, actually. And one of my friends is part of a charity, and she had some difficulties with family bereavements in her past. And I knew she worked with psychics and mediums and that. So I messaged her just saying what had happened at the boot camp, after the boot camp. And I said, do you know anyone I can speak to? Because my curiosity was getting the better of me. And she's like, yeah, here's a number. Phone this woman or message her for an appointment. So I messaged this woman for an appointment. And I said to her, listen, do you have any spare appointments? I'd like to get a booking in with you to chat about whatever it was I said to her, but just chat. And she's like, that's okay, son. She messaged me back saying, I have space, somebody's cancelled this afternoon, so I can give you a phone call. So I was like, fucking happy days, you're a bonus, man. So she phoned me, I think it was like 1:30 or something, she phoned me. And I just started chatting to her. And we just chatted about like my dad and chatting about my gambling and chatting about just different people within my life who'd also passed away. And that full hour on the phone was a complete blur. A complete blur. It was the first time I think I actually spoke to anyone about absolutely anything, to be honest. My gambling, my dad, my gran who'd passed away, one of my best mates' mothers, Big Kate, who'd passed away recently, who looked after me when I was a young guy, going through my addictions when I fell out with my mum and that. And this isn't like woo-woo stuff, like, oh, she was fucking pulling people at the ether and telling me this and that. And it was more like a fucking hour therapy session, to be honest. Came off the phone and put the phone down and I just sobbed crying for, couldn't even tell you how long. And you know that feeling after that phone call just felt like the weight had lifted off my shoulders. The weight of the world was evaporating. The armour, the pretending, it was all gone with all the floods of fucking tears that were coming down my face, man. And I just sat there like, no sad, And no tears of joy, like probably in between. Like tears of relief. That I was able to get all that, or process all that shit from my past in that phone call that I were with that woman. And everything after that was just a load of synchronicities happening in my life. After that day, I stopped the gambling. So I did. I made a pact with my mate I was living with that we would stop. Waiting for a week. The week passed. Then waiting for a month passed, then a year. We came off the alcohol, we done a year off the alcohol. And everything after that was probably my turning point when I looked at myself and said, sure, you're not fine emotionally, mate. It's time to start looking at yourself in the mirror and take a wee bit of responsibility.